How's everybody doing tonight? Hope you're doing well. We're going through the 23rd Psalm, probably easily the most loved psalm, and for good reason. So turn in your Bibles to Psalm 23, and let's read it through again before we start. We'll go on to the next little phrase in the psalm, but let's read through Psalm 23. Would someone volunteer to read that, please?
The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He takes me to lush pastures. He leads me to refreshing water. He restores my strength. He leads me down the right path for the sake of his reputation. Even when I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no danger, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff reassure me. You prepare a feast before me in plain sight of my enemies. You refresh my head with oil. My cup is completely full. Surely your goodness and faithfulness will pursue me all my days, and I will live in the house of the Lord for the rest of my life.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Great psalm. And as I said, I've taken a few points along from a book written by a shepherd. His name's Philip Keller. Wrote a book called "A Shepherd Looks at the 23rd Psalm." And the idea of "He restores my soul" is what we want to look at tonight. It carries on this thought of rest, which the shepherd provides for his sheep. And so David says, up to this point, my shepherd takes care of me. My God is my shepherd, and he takes care of me. And he provides for all my needs, my food, water, protection. I feel so comfortable that I lie down. He makes me lie down in green pastures, and I get some rest. I kind of, in keeping with the flow of the thought, I kind of imagine David saying, he provides all these things. I mean, he restores my soul, and so that's what we want to look at tonight. I mean, in doing all these things, David says, as a shepherd, he restores my soul. Is that too much of an overstatement? Is that hyperbole? He restores my soul. That is a really powerful, magnificent statement, isn't it? He restores my soul. To restore means to repair, renovate, or return to a former condition. The Hebrew word here for restore means turning back or refreshing. And so it literally kind of means he causes my life to return to me. I like that. I think that helps us understand it. He causes my life to return to me. He causes me to live. He quickens me. Quickens is a term that is used. I think it was used more years ago, but the idea is coming to life again. The Good Shepherd provides spiritual restoration, and so David says that God renews. He breathes life back into me. He renews my life. And so as David's shepherd, God restores him by supplying him with food and water and rest. And in order to be refreshed and renewed, some rest is required, of course. Green pastures, the quiet waters that we've talked about are the physical nourishment that gives the sheep new life, gives the sheep energy. Those green pastures and those quiet waters. And so the idea here is that the shepherd literally revives the life of the sheep. under his care. About 600 years after David wrote the psalm, Jesus said something. Turn if you will, over to John chapter 10. John chapter 10, Jesus says, beginning with verse 11, he says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hireling and not a shepherd, who is not the owner of the sheep, beholds the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he's a hireling and is not concerned about the sheep. I am the good shepherd, but I know my own, and my own know me. Even the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And so that's Jesus talking, very, very familiar terminology. Again and again and again in the Old Testament and the New Testament, we see God compared to the shepherd, and we compared to his sheep. Turn with me, if you will, over to Hebrews 13. If I can get over there. Hebrews 13. Verse 20. The Hebrews writer is closing out this letter to the Hebrews, and he says, Now the God of peace, who brought up from the dead the great shepherd of the sheep through the blood of the eternal covenant, even Jesus our Lord. And so he's again the good shepherd. He came, what did Jesus say? I came to do what? Seek and save the lost. I came to look for those who are lost and save them. F.B. Meyer wrote this. He has a shepherd's heart, beating with pure and generous love, that counted not his own lifeblood too high a price to pay down as our ransom. He has a shepherd's eye that takes in the whole flock and misses not even the poor sheep wandering away on the mountains cold. He has a shepherd's faithfulness, which will never fail or forsake, leave us comfortless, nor flee when he sees the wolf coming. He has a shepherd's strength, so that he is well able to deliver us from the jaw of the lion or the paw of the bear. He has a shepherd's tenderness, no lamb so tiny that he will not carry, no saint so weak that he will not gently lead, no soul so faint that he will not give it rest. His gentleness makes great. I think that's a kind of a nice little synopsis there F.B. Meyer wrote. Well, God, how does God restore our souls? I think he does it in a number of different ways, but how does he restore our soul? Well, I'm going to suggest three, but I want to focus on one tonight. He restores our souls through his word. Psalm 19 says, the law of the Lord is perfect, restoring the soul. That's the same Hebrew word there. The law of the Lord is perfect, restoring the soul. And so Psalm 19 and Psalm 23 talks about him restoring our souls. And so it's through his word. That's certainly a very significant and important way that God can and does restore our soul to us. We can be down, we can be frustrated, we can be discouraged, we can be lots of things, and we sit down and read some of God's word, and it breathes life into us, right? No matter what mood you're in, you could sit down and there's a lot of things, but you could sit down and read Psalm 23. And I dare say no matter what you're going through, you sit down and read Psalm 23, you're going to feel better afterwards, right? Just the psalm, through his word, restores our soul. And then another way, of course, is through prayer. we're to draw near with confidence, and the Hebrews writer says we'll find mercy and grace there. And so our soul is brought back alive through the looking at God's Word, meditating on it, and through prayer. But I want to focus a little bit more on another way that God restores our soul. And I think it may be at times one of the most underappreciated, and also maybe the most neglected. And that is that God restores our soul through his people. Often, he uses another Christian. Turn to Galatians chapter 1. I'm sorry, I said 1, I meant 6. Galatians 6. And we're going to begin with verse 1. A pretty familiar passage, but just listen to how Paul exhorts the brethren at Galatia. Brethren, even if a man is caught in a trespass, you who are spiritual, restore. There's a word, restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness, each one looking to yourself, lest you too be tempted. Bear one another's burdens, and thus fulfill the law of Christ. For if anyone thinks he's something when he's nothing, he deceives himself. But let each one examine his own work, and then he will have reason for boasting in regard to himself alone, and not in regard to another. For each one shall bear his own load. Verse 9. And let us not lose heart in doing good, for in due time we shall reap if we do not grow weary. So then, while we have opportunity, let us do good to all men, and especially to those who are of the household of faith. Paul there is encouraging and exhorting us to help one another. We have a responsibility to look out for ourselves, but we also have a responsibility to help one another. I'm afraid that many people, down through the years, I'm afraid that it may be that many people who could have been claimed for the Lord, who grew weary, tired, and they fell away. And if someone would have said something to them, it might have brought them back. It might have been an encouragement. Have you ever had your soul restored? I think probably all of us have in one way or another. I have. It's an amazing thing what a word of encouragement can do. Most of you know I've worked in children's homes for a long time, and I've learned that sometimes the most insignificant thing that you may say to a person can have such a meaning to them, be such an encouragement to them. I remember the first time we were house parents, and this girl that was in our house there in the home, and I don't remember a lot of the specifics about it, but I think I knew that she was having a tough day or something, and I walked by. I can still remember I walked by in the hall, and I remembered it later. And I walked by her in the hall, and I said, "Wilma, it's going to be okay. Keep your head up." And I really didn't think that much about it. But it was several. I think it was several months later that she brought that to my attention and told me how much that meant to her. You can really be encouraged by a word fitly spoken, as the proverb says, are like apples of gold. There have been times when people have said things to me, and man, it just. I remember one time I was going through some difficult things, and I was being accused of some stuff that I didn't do, and And somebody, I guess, knew that. And they sent me a card. And it just meant so much to me. And in fact, I went to him and I said, you don't know how much that card meant to me. It really helped me. And so the sheep may have strayed off of the trail. We've talked about that. Straight off the trail to nibble at something else. Maybe not knowing that it's poisonous. And so the shepherd restores them. The shepherd restores them. I know none of us are perfect, and we don't do things in perfect ways. But sometimes we don't say it right. But I think sometimes we minimize or something what a word of encouragement can do to a person. And I think that's one of the really cool ways that God restores a person's soul through us, through one another, through each other. It's not a terribly difficult thing to look through the pocket directory and see, is there somebody there that you just haven't seen in a while? Call them up and say, hey, I just wanted to call and say hi. I haven't seen you in a while. How are things going? You never know what something like that might do for a person. Because Satan is alive and he's active and he discourages people and he makes people fearful or angry or bitter or mad or whatever, and so they quit. They shouldn't, but they do. And so we grow in spite of Paul's encouragement, we grow weary in well-doing. We get tired in mind, body, and spirit. We have doubts. We're frustrated. We're confused. And like sheep, people walk away and make it difficult for God to restore them. But he can use me and you to do that. And that's one of the important ways that I think he does it. There's such a thing as a cast sheep or a cast down sheep. A cast sheep or a cast down sheep is one blessed by the shepherd, pasture, clear water, all that stuff. And he gets, because the shepherd's taking care of him, he gets fatter and fatter, and his wool gets longer and longer. And so maybe it's an afternoon sun or something, and the sheep picks a spot to lay down and rest. And sheep being dumb like they are, he rolls over on his back. And his feet are up in the air. And that's called a cast down sheep, as I understand it. And this sheep is on its back, and its feet, its paws are up in the air, frantically trying to roll back over. But the wool is very heavy, and it acts as a stabilizer to stabilize the sheep there. And so this sheep is lying on his back, paws in the air, frantically waving to try to make something happen, and it can't get up. It can't roll back over. And people can get that way, weighed down by their own sin, the sin of others, the wear and tear of life. They're broken down. And yeah, we know they wandered off. They brought some of it on themselves. We know they wandered off, and they shouldn't have. But a cast sheep, that's why the shepherd has to keep a close eye. That's one of the reasons why a shepherd has to keep a close eye. And it can happen to any of the sheep, as I understand. It can happen to any sheep, any time, day or night. And they say unless it gets rescued, in that situation, it's not going to get out and it's going to die. And isn't that true also of us? We wander away from God and we become a cast down sheep and we can't get out of it. We've made a mess of it or whatever, and we can't get out of it. And the shepherd comes along looking, and if the sheep doesn't get up, some bad things can happen. It's wasting energy, and it's not getting anywhere. It is an inviting meal to a predator, a wolf or buzzard or cougar or whatever. But the point is, unless the sheep gets some help, and help that it can't provide for itself, it's going to die. And the same is true, I think, of us as people. A person gets down, we're vulnerable to the attacks of Satan, and we need somebody to turn us around. And my point is, God, one of the ways he does that is through us. By a word of encouragement or by saying something to another. Many people, in any congregation, there are people who are carrying a tremendous burden, a tremendous load. And the strange thing is, more often than not, at least from my experience, more often than not, they don't seek the help of the congregation. If you get to help them, it'll be because you found out in some other way. Not because the person came up to you and said, listen, I'm really going through a difficult time right now. Can we go in one of these rooms back here and pray together and would you pray for me? That doesn't happen very much, does it? I don't think it happens nearly as much as it ought to. It is amazing at times what burdens people can carry. Somewhere I read a long time ago, I'm not sure this is even true, but somewhere it said that if we have 5 close friends that you can share your burdens with, then you're very blessed. Very blessed. But we, I don't know, maybe it's the American way in us that we don't open up with problems sometimes that we have. Or maybe we're afraid that if I tell somebody, they'll gossip about it. But we need to make an effort to respond to God, and we need to try to do what we can to help our fellow Christians as we have opportunity. And that applies to everybody. At times, the healthy sheep, maybe the leader or the strongest ones, are most vulnerable to the attack, they say. They go astray as well. Have you ever heard or known of a preacher who ran off with another person's wife? I have. Have you ever known a preacher who had a nervous breakdown? I have. Have you ever known an elder who was so mistreated by the brethren and got so frustrated he just quit? One of the things that, let me just interject here. From my perspective, I think the eldership here feels overall a great deal of encouragement from the congregation here. The elders are mentioned regularly in prayers and a number of other things. But even the leaders, even the strongest of the sheep, need that because we're all susceptible. What did Paul say? 1 Corinthians 9. He said, I train and buffet my body daily so that my preaching may have saved others, and yet then I'm disqualified. And so everybody needs it. We all have feet of clay. Somebody said when you're flat on your back in a hospital, there's no place to look but up. I heard of an elder, I didn't know him personally, and this was when I was a kid. An elder came home to see his wife in bed with another man. And he went in the other room and got a gun and went back in the bedroom and killed both of them. And he said later, I don't know what happened. Something just snapped. So, leaders have feet of clay as well. So we all need to be careful that we don't become cast sheep. And if we do, remember that God can restore our souls. He can breathe life back into us. They say when a sheep is cast or cast down, the digestive system, the circulatory system in sheep begins to go haywire. And if the weather is hot, the hotter the weather, the more quickly the sheep will die, unless somebody comes along and turns the sheep back on its feet and holds it there for a couple minutes until it can get its equilibrium and get its breath. And it's able to walk. And what I want to say to us here tonight is there are probably people like that in this congregation right now. And you may be the one who can give them a word of encouragement, send them a card, send them a text, send them an email. Think about the ways we're able to do it today. I mean, I just mentioned several. Well, I don't remember when the telephone was invented, but before the telephone was invented, we didn't even have that. People didn't even have, if you're going to talk to somebody, you had to go over there and talk to them, right? But even 30 years ago, email, text, we've got lots of ways that we can do it. And I think it's important for us to try to do that at times. It might be a good thing if you're so inclined to send Dreama Thompson a text or a note. Brant's was buried yesterday. Dreama may be cast down. And by the way, she's going to be moving back to her home. She grew up in east of here, so she's going to be moving back. But we all have very busy lives, don't we? But I think we all wish that we could develop more of a sense of oneness and support in a church, because we are a brother's keeper, right? We can't get away with that any more than Cain can. Am I my brother's keeper? And so we need to continue to grow in our desire to encourage and admonish one another. And there's something very meaningful and very powerful, I believe, about a Christian saying to another Christian, I'm really having a difficult time. Would you pray for me? I have known a number of situations where people did that, and not one time have I ever heard the other Christian respond by saying, "No, I don't want to do that." Every time, of course I'll pray for you. In a practical way, it's been said, it seems if I'm not there when you need me, then you don't need me. That may be a little bit unfair. None of us can be everywhere at once. But when the sheep begins to walk, again, it stumbles. It's been turned upright. It's been allowed to get on its feet. It's been